if I'm earning the same 20 grand and I'm spending my spare money on, donating shoes to the homeless or whatever, when I come into money, that's going to get magnified and I'm going to start a foundation or, do something good with that money. The money is a magnifying glass.
So true.
And the difference between those two people is the belief about who they are.
Welcome to another episode of Bigger Than the Hustle podcast. And today I've got another international guest. Well, he's a hybrid international. He's a Brit that now lives out in Canada. And I met him recently and our paths have crossed. And he's a brother from a different mother for me. So he's an awesome guy. He's got a lot to share, and I'm sure we can share some wisdom on this podcast. So before much to do, I'm going to introduce him. His name is Tom Lancaster. So hi, Tom.
Hi, Babak. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you in these exciting times?
I am fantastic. We just, the restrictions have just opened up yesterday a little bit more, and we have a 4-step plan here to get back to normal. So I'm feeling pretty excited.
Nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over the microphone to you. If you could just introduce yourself the way you'd like to be introduced, and then we can roll into the conversation from there.
Sounds good. So my name is Tom Lancaster. As you said, I'm based in Vancouver. And what I do is I help people who have achieved success, probably in multiple disciplines, but still feel empty. They feel flat and it feels meaningless when they get there. Through a combination of adventure and consciousness exploration, I help them begin the adventure back home to themselves. Because what I've learned in my own personal journey is it doesn't matter what you achieve out there. If you hate yourself, if you don't respect yourself, if you don't feel safe in yourself, it's all meaningless. And I know that there are lots of other people out there who are on a similar path, who have achieved a lot of things, who everyone from the outside, everyone's looking at them going, "You're amazing. How do you do all of this stuff?" But on the inside, there's nothing. On the inside, there's this big hole.
That resonates with me wholly, because I've been on that journey as well, where the outward veneer of success, of the trappings of the Western society success, but behind that mask I was broken, and we've obviously talked about that before as well. So what really interests me is that where did this come from in terms of your journey to allow you to be in front of myself and other people to try and help them and support them on this kind of process and this kind of journey? Where did your insights come from for you to be here today?
Do you mean in reference to, like how I grew up and how I came to this place?
Yeah.
So I had a very privileged childhood, but it was also very challenging. Mm-hmm. I moved countries when I was 2, 4, 7. Then I went to boarding school when I was 9. Then my parents divorced when I was 12. And then I moved to a different boarding school when I was 13. I saw someone drown on the beach, and I was like the only one on the shore, and I was 12, and I was trying to coordinate with the police in Dubai. And the whole thing was a disaster, and she drowned. And so even though I never wanted for money or holidays or things, I never felt safe because I was bullied at school, because I never had any kind of sense of home, because I was moving countries the whole time. At boarding school, I was completely starved of any kind of affection, and there was no kind of mother replacement, if you like. And so I grew up with this feeling that I was supposed to be doing something in the world. And my parents and my teachers and everyone, they told me that I was this like powerful being, that I was going to change the world. And I was like, what does that mean? That's not helpful. Like, that just makes me feel even worse. because I feel like I'm not achieving the things that I can achieve. And then the other piece of the puzzle, which I actually only just realized recently, is because I had a major change every 2 years of my life for the first 14 years, that set up a pattern that has repeated itself through my whole life to date, where any new relationship, any new job, any new country that I move to, any new group of friends, a hobby, like whatever it is, it has a 2-year lifespan. And it's only, hindsight's 2020, and it's only looking back that I can chart all of those moments and see how, as you said, how I've ended up here talking to you. Mm-hmm. Where I started to find myself, to come home to myself, to understand who I was, who I am, was when I started to go out into the wild, and I learned to rock climb when I was 14. And that was, paradoxically, that was the first time I ever felt safe, because I was in control. It was the first time I ever had agency over what I was doing, who I was hanging out with, what risks I would take. And so I got really into all kinds of adventure: climbing, mountain biking, whitewater kayaking was really big for me. And, what I gained from that was, I grew up in a liminal space, right? The liminal space being the space between here and there, not quite this, but not yet that. And that was my whole life, right? I'm not living in this country anymore, but still not at home in this one. Not, my parents aren't together anymore, but where do I live in between? And so many examples of that. And adventure itself is a liminal space. We were just talking in the pre-show about a solo adventure that I went on this weekend, where one of the real things that hit home was how the person that comes home from an adventure is not the person that leaves. And when you're doing something, and adventure for me is not just adventure out into the wild. Adventure is anywhere, by any time you step into the unknown, anytime you find yourself in an uncontrolled environment with an uncertain outcome. So that could be building a business, it could be a relationship, it could be, even going to the shops. You don't know how it's going to pan out, right? And you can see it as an adventure or not. So, so as I got into adventure, I started to get more kind of self-confidence. I started to get more self-belief. And then as I guess I was about 20 when I discovered yoga for the first time, 25 maybe, when I discovered yoga for the first time. And that was the beginning of my exploration into consciousness and energy and the universe and all of that. And so fast forward to now, and what I've realized is that when we go outwards on an adventure into the big wide world, our world becomes very small and very focused. And it's like one foot in front of the other, or this climbing hold is the only thing that my whole focus is on, this 4 inches square of rock. And when we go inside into that small place inside, our world becomes infinitely big. And that's where possibility exists. That's where, where there's no limits in here. And so what I say is that when we go on an adventure, we have a spiritual experience. And when we go down the spiritual path, it's an adventure. Mm-hmm. And so what happens when we bring the spirit of adventure and the adventure of spirit into our lives and into our leadership?
Yeah. And that's a really interesting journey for you to be sat here. And what really hit home to me just when you explained something is the truth of when we go out into the wild, or when we go out into mountains or nature, we become minuscule and we realize how small we really are. When we're sitting in our office in front of email, we have that spotlight syndrome, don't we, where we believe we're the center of the universe. And only when we see the enormity and the gravitas of everything that's around us, that's truly amazing. Not an Instagram picture, but an actual mountain that's taken millions of years to evolve, for example. And then you realize that I am just this little thing that can be crushed at any time if nature chose to. And then you, like you said, it's when you go within, then you realize that within is the world, is the enormity of what you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And I love it that the way you created that just by explaining that. So thank you for that.
Well, I love that what you took from that. And it's so true. Like, one of the things about adventure is the feeling of awe, the feeling of I am nothing, I am tiny.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it's also that feeling of all that matters is this next step.
Yeah.
And this next step, and this next step, and this next step, which, and that, when we can bring that back to our computer, where we have as you said, the spotlight syndrome, and we think we're this big important thing and the world revolves around us. But we also think that this problem that we're dealing with is so huge and it's insurmountable. But all we have to do is take the next step. Whatever, and even if that doesn't end up being the right step, it will show the next step, and that will show the next step.
Yeah. And something that I've been trying to train myself over the last few weeks is the 3 words, this is life. Now, we sit and we think about, what I want my life to be, where I want it to be, or what I want to grow into. But me sitting with you today, right now, is life. That's it. Irrespective of what else is going on outside us, right? And when we're doing the dishes, that's life. And when we're getting changed in the morning, that's life in that moment. And every moment, exactly what you're saying, step by step, if we just concentrate on that one step, we realize most things are okay. They work out the way. But we put so much emphasis on something that's not happened or something that's already happened rather than what's happening right now. And I think those kind of... Sorry?
I was just going to say my favorite quote about that is from Kung Fu Panda.
Okay.
Master Oogway says, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, today is a gift. That's why they call it the present.
Yeah. Perfect. That is exactly, that sums up. But the issue is, Tom, is we keep getting dragged out, don't we? Constantly, as in, even I have to consciously keep saying that to myself, whatever I'm doing, this is life, this is life. And that's the way, it's like my anchor into that moment. Saying, just enjoy this moment, because there may not be another moment that turns up.
But that's the thing, the thing that makes us human. Right? When you look at a dog, right, that is ultimate presence.
Yeah.
Or even a baby.
Yeah.
Right. I was in the park yesterday and there was this mum and this kid, and the kid was running and like giggling and laughing, and the mum picked up the kid, instant screams, ah! And the second she put the kid down, back to laughing and smiling. It's just like, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I'm going to express.
Yeah.
Or the dog, you take out the ball and the dog's like, oh my God, a ball. And then you put the ball away and it's like, oh my God, a stick. It's not like, wait, where's the ball gone? I really wanted that ball. I was really looking forward to chasing that ball, and now you've taken it away from me. Right? The dog doesn't have any of those thoughts. He's just here. It's just here.
In the moment. Yeah.
But as humans, we have this giant meaning-making machine that insists on, and that's how we've evolved and how we survived, is by remembering all of the terrible things that have happened in the past so that we can avoid them, and from those memories planning the future so that we avoid terrible thing. But that doesn't need to be our focus. If we focus on what's the consequences of this action, then we're going to find all the consequences. But if we focus on what's the possibility of this action, what could go amazing, then that's what we'll find.
And it's interesting, the consequence versus possibility, because our brain generally tricks into consequence, doesn't it? Because we're drawing upon a past that we already know, whereas possibility is a future that we don't know, and that is possible, but there may be nothing in our current existence or circumstance that tells us that it is possible. And that's the definition of faith, isn't it? When we have a faith, nothing tells us that this is out there or this is true, but we just know or we believe in something, even though our environment or circumstances does not show us anything to prove that it's true. And I think it's really important. I think it's important to have that ability to go outside of what we know and go, trust in something that may happen because it's a possibility. And for me, the truth has been possibilities exist everywhere. We just have to draw upon them and then fix our attention on that to make it possible.
Yeah. And there's science behind this. I don't know. Are you familiar with the reticular activation system?
Yeah.
It's a small little node in the brain, and the job of it is to filter information, right? Because we receive so much information that we can't process. And so there's a specific part of our brain that filters out anything that's not irrelevant, which is why when I show up at your house driving a yellow Mini, suddenly you see yellow Minis everywhere. But we can train the RAS. And this whole consequence possibility thing, if I train my RAS to only see danger, then that's all. The only information that it will allow in is how scary the world is. There's that guy who looks like he's going to beat me up. There's that driver who's going too fast and maybe he's drunk. There's this, there's that. Whereas if we train ourselves, and it takes work. It's like going to the gym and building muscles. If we train ourselves to see opportunity, or to just be open to the fact that there is possibility that we have no idea what it is, then we can allow that information in. And then when we walk past that person and we have that little slight tinge of an impulse, then, some kind of magic comes out of that conversation that we had no idea it could be. But otherwise we shut ourselves down from that.
And why do you think that is? Is it still because it's the 2 million year old brain that's still very much in the 1.99 million years of process of fear and of security, and it's only been the last 50 years of abundance that we're still coming to terms with to try and change that, thought process? Or is it that it's just something that's so alien to us that we have to almost keep doing it before it becomes true?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's, the seed, I think, is that it's hardwired into us. It's a survival tool. It's a survival tool that is the reason that we're here, but it doesn't serve us anymore. But then from that, we are also trained by everything in our environment. There are whole departments in every corporation that are dedicated to risk management, that are dedicated to, figuring out all of the ways that things could go wrong and preventing them. And we live in that world, and we live in a world of lawyers and insurance and, helicopter parenting. And there's so many ways that we learn to stay small and safe and don't leave the cave. And, and for some people, that's fine. Some people are very happy to just live their life and not take any risks and go to work and get money and go on their holiday to Corfu. And, and that's great. But so many of us are dissatisfied and feel that there is more available. And there is, But it, like you said before, it takes constant work because we will naturally default to the dominant neural pathways, which are the result of the training that we've had through our whole life and the genes that we've inherited through millions of years of evolution.
Now, do you know, for that to happen, so it sounds like from your journey and the processes that's happened to you, that you chose that this is now, I feel I don't want to draw upon that. I use that as lessons, but my new path forward is not going to use that as my way forward. It's going to be a new way forward that I want to learn about and I want to experience. Similar to myself, there was so much in my past that has been a struggle, and now, you know, I've been through a process of retraining myself cell by cell to be here, even talking to you today. So for me, it was a crisis point. It reached a point where I couldn't continue on the way that I was going. I was, you know, for sure going to an early death, and that changed my process.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find from your experience, whether yourself or the people around you, that it takes a moment or a year or a moment in time, whatever length that is, to say, I cannot continue on this path, it's not serving me, before a choice is made? Or do you think that can happen from a comfort zone as well?
Who is it? It's Neufeld. I can't remember his first name. Someone Neufeld talks about the wall of futility.
Mm-hmm.
When when things are ticking along nicely and we're kind of generally dissatisfied, you know, we're programmed, and so we are hardwired to deal with that. You know, for me, I lived with massive depression for years. The turning point for me was that I happened to be at one of these really low points where, the timing obviously was perfect. I'd moved to Vancouver. I'd retrained. I'd spent 10 years in the film industry, hated it. I'd finally figured out something that I might be interested in, and I moved to Vancouver, which I'd always realized that with the visa situation, it was very unlikely that I was going to find anyone to employ me. And I just sunk into this like really deep depression, and I was just kind of struggling to get out of bed and even go and have a shower. And it just happened that Dispenza's books. I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza, yeah.
I came across his book, Becoming Super, a couple of his books before, when I was in London, when I was in my normal environment, when things were ticking along. I was generally kind of miserable, but everything was okay. And the information had just gone in and out. I was like, that's interesting. Yeah. I'm not going to do anything about it. But at this moment in time, there was a kind of a perfect soup for me of, I had changed my context. You know, I'd gone on this adventure. I had reached rock bottom. I had moved my mind from a place of, you know, just ticking along, doing the job that I'd been doing for 10 years, into curiosity mode. I'd gone back to school. I was in knowledge accumulation mode. And so when I read this book, I was like, well, I might as well try this, because this sucks where I am right now. And so I started to do the meditations, and the meditations that he does are very future focused, possibility driven. What do you want to create in the world? What does that feel like inside when you have that dream job, when you have that perfect relationship? Like, what does it feel like? And in doing so, you create the conditions in here where that thing out there can come into your life, because you're a vibrational match for it. So to come back to your question, there's two parts. I think you do need to hit the wall of futility. You do need to hit that moment where you're like, this can't continue.
Mm.
And that moment doesn't have to be, you're on death's door or whatever. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. But at some point, there's that saying that you can't help anyone to change who doesn't want to change.
Yeah.
In whatever industry, right? You can't coach someone who doesn't want to be coached. You can't. And so it could be, your situation that you've explained, you were, it was pretty dire, even though you had a lot of stuff. For me, it was also pretty dire in that I just couldn't get out of bed. I was just, utterly miserable the whole time. But it doesn't need to be that. The turning point doesn't need to be that. The turning point can just be a realization that I'm not satisfied. And I know that the pain of continuing along this path that I'm on is greater than the pain of change.
Yeah.
Because there's no getting away from the fact that change is hard. The transition, the liminal space is scary. It's confronting. We have to deal with all kinds of beliefs and fears about the world and about ourselves and about the people around us. So there is an element of pain that we have to go through in order to become something new. The metaphor here is the lobster doesn't change his skin because he's comfortable, right?
Mm.
The lobster is I would imagine, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine it's extremely uncomfortable to be too big for the skin you're in.
Mm. Yeah.
And so the skin has to come off. And the snake is another great metaphor. Like when the snake sheds its skin, the skin doesn't just come off. It has to go and find thorny bushes and rocks and rub itself against them to shake the skin loose so that it can grow into its next evolution. And that's what we have to do. We have to go to those dark places. We have to, look under the rocks of our consciousness, examine our fears, examine our beliefs. And that's why we need a coach. That's why we need someone who can see our stories and our excuses and our beliefs from the outside, because we can't see that. I can't see the traps that I set for myself. I can't see the ways that I set myself up to fail.
Yeah.
But having a coach can do that.
And someone outside of yourself, and like you said, when someone, it's the same thing, isn't it? Where where you can't see your own traps, you can't see where you're setting yourself up, but a lot of time you can't even see your own potential. And it's both sides of that coin, isn't it? Where someone I can see more potential in you than probably what you can see in yourself. Likewise, the other way around. And that's an interesting situation as well, because when someone almost tells us, do you realize that this is possible for you? And you're like, I don't think so, because nothing in my environment tells me it is. But it's that conversation, isn't it, that actually allows you to widen your peripheral vision and become more aware of possibility. And I think that conversation is huge. And again,
so a thought that I had this weekend when I was out on the trail, it's like, imagine that you're hiking and it's nighttime and you don't have a head torch. You can't see where you're going. It's dark and you're bashing into boulders. Sometimes you're on the trail, but then you're falling off a cliff and you're like, what's going on? Why does my face hurt? Right? Because you don't even know that there's a boulder there that you just walked into. All you know is that your face hurts. And then, okay, well, maybe if I go this way, and then it's fine for a little bit, and then you walk into a tree or whatever. And working with somebody outside yourself is like putting on a head torch. And then you can see that's a boulder. Do I want to walk into it? That's a tree. Do I want to walk into it? This looks like open space ahead. Well, there's a mountaintop up there. Maybe I can get there. we can't see these things by ourselves because we don't have that. We're just stumbling in the dark.
Yeah.
And, and it's possible in the dark that you're walking along the trail and not tripping over and making progress and gaining height and getting towards your goal. But it's also very possible that you're going in completely the wrong direction.
Or not the direction that you wanted to go. You just believed you. Sometimes it's life that we allow to push us in certain directions. And when I say life, whether that be society, whether that be media, whether it be family, whether it be friends, whether it be whoever it is, either keep us stuck or don't allow us to traverse to the direction which we possibly and we know will be at our strongest, because there's so many other things there's some decisions that need to be made. And someone outside of your situation that can then show you that and give you almost like the belief and the strength to say, these are the simple steps we need to take. I will tell you this. Let's just do them. And I've seen that myself.
The classic example of that is like, Dad was a lawyer, I'm going to be a lawyer. Or Dad was a mechanic, I'm going to be a mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's never any other possibility. For me, there was no possibility other than I was going to go to boarding school, I was going to go to a good university, and I was going to get a professional job. Like, that was the path for me. And I tried to go down that path because it was the only option that was presented to me, and I couldn't do it. It didn't work. It just wasn't who I was. And I was lucky that, I didn't have to get to 40 before I realized that I was, and I have a great friend, Tony Martinetti, who he says what he does is he helps leaders make sure they're climbing the right mountain. Because his story is he was a CFO in a Fortune 500 or 100 company, I can't remember what. And he had put in so much effort to get to the top. And then he was looking around and he was like, well, the view sucks from here. This is not the mountain that I want to be climbing. And, so I was fortunate in a way in that I knew from the beginning that this was not the path for me. But I was also unfortunate in that I didn't know what the alternative was. And so I lived my whole life literally stumbling around in the dark. I was like, well, let me try this. No, that didn't work. What about this? No. And then I found film and I was like, okay, well, let's do this. And, and I achieved success, but I felt the whole time like, I felt like a fraud because I didn't really want to be there. And so I didn't, I did the bare minimum that I needed to survive and to make sure that I got through the job and then got on to the next job. But I was also just deeply dissatisfied with no idea what else could be possible for me.
And at that moment when you were dissatisfied and realizing that this is not the path, I don't know what the path is, or I don't know which way I'm meant to be going. I think that it can be analysis paralysis where you overthink everything and then you actually do nothing. But for that confusion, that moment in time when you are confused, how long that moment in time is, whether that be a minute, whether that be a year, whatever it is, that confusion happens. Would you say it's more beneficial to go silent and go within, or then to try and overload yourself with information, to try and do lots of different things to try and find a way to find your light?
Well, one thing that you definitely don't need is more thinking. All of this confusion, doubt, fear, insecurity, all of it is caused by thinking. And because we live in a thought-created reality. Yeah. Our thoughts create our reality, and then our reality creates our thoughts, and we go around in a loop. And and this is why, for me, it's these two prongs of adventure and consciousness, adventure and spirituality. because what we need, the more confused we are, the more stressed we are, the more urgent we feel this problem is, the more we need to shut our laptop and do something else.
Yeah.
Whether that is meditate. I wrote an article a while ago called 3 Minutes Changes Everything. When we're in that confusion, that stress, if we just stop and take 3 minutes and focus on your breath, focus on the sensation of the weight in your chair, what can you see in the room around you, for just 3 minutes, you will find space when you come back to that problem. And, adventure gives you a change of context. It gives you an opportunity to slow down those thoughts. And again, I'm reading a great book at the moment called Zen on the Trail, which is about taking these Buddhist practices and imbuing them into your hiking. Mm-hmm. And looking at a plant and contemplating the whole system that plant is a part of, from the nebula that created the molecules, to the dust cloud that created the galaxy, to the sunlight that created the leaves and the seed that was planted that grew into this thing. And then when it dies, it's going to go back into the soil and fertilize the next plant. To just be with your environment in that way. Again, what it does is it creates space inside, and we get distance from the urgency of our problems and our situation, because that email doesn't make any difference if you send it now in high stress, or in an hour, or in 3 days. It really makes no difference. Yeah. But the difference is, if you send it now, the energy that you're going to communicate is one of lack, of fear, of scarcity. And if you remove yourself from that situation and you get a bit of space, then when you come back to that email, you're coming back with spaciousness, with possibility, with a clear head.
And I believe in that, in terms of when you send something, even if it's a message, like an email, text message, or whatever it is, the energy, that the intention that it's written with comes across in the words, even though the words may be exactly the same. The way it's received by the receiving party gets all the energy that's been sent in as well. And that's why the whole thing about intention, if you don't have the right intention in whether you live your life in a certain way, whatever you send out, the words you use, the food you eat, whatever it is, it all replicates itself further and further. And
which is why entrepreneurs, if the goal of entrepreneurship is to make money, you're doomed to fail. Because you can make money from that place, but it always comes from a place of scarcity, or a lack of purpose, or whatever flavor it is. But that's why almost everyone, the internet is awash with entrepreneur coaches, marketing coaches, and anyone who's worth their salt as a coach. You come and you say, I need to make 7 figures. I have an option as a coach to be like, okay, well, here are the steps that you need to do to make 7 figures. You need to post every day at this time, and this is how the content needs to be structured, and this is what your offer needs to have. And that's not going to work. Because if you don't believe in what you're doing, you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe in the lives of the people that you're improving through this product, either you'll never make the money, or you'll make it and it will destroy you. And so any coach who's worth their salt, the first question when someone says, I want to make 7 figures, or I have this problem, or whatever, is, okay, well, what's underneath that? Why is that important to you?
Why? Yeah.
And it's only when you get down to what is the feeling that you want to avoid, what is the feeling that you want to create, that's when the work starts. Okay, so you're feeling fear right now. What's that about? What are you afraid of? You're afraid of failure. You're afraid of judgment. You're afraid of whatever. And where does that come from? And what do you want to feel? You want to feel joy. You want to feel freedom. You want to feel purpose. Okay, well, when have you felt that before? What was it that you were doing when you felt that? How can you create that in the work that you do and the life that you lead? And then all of the other stuff, all of the writing articles and the, structuring the emails and blah, blah, whatever, that then all just happens naturally.
It's so powerful. And your everything you've just transmitted there verbally is just sits so well with me, because through the experience of being through that journey, it is so true. Especially when it comes to money, it should be the byproduct of what you do, not the reason you do it. And it's like you said, if your why is not powerful enough, there will the times when you hit lows, you'll question why you're doing it. But when your why is strong enough, it's just another hurdle for you to get through, to get to the bigger purpose that you're on. And that's your driver. That's your rocket pack, isn't it? That's the thing that's going to keep powering you forward when nothing else in your environment is helping you at all. And when you're giving your power away to this little thing called money, you're giving it the power. You're saying that's you're the reason I'm doing it, so therefore I'm going to be your slave and you are going to be my master. And when it's that kind of relationship, it's doomed to fail. And I've seen it myself,
And the other thing is that, people say money is evil. Money is the root of all evil and these things. It's not true. Money is a magnifying glass. Money is a revealer of who you really are. Because if you're someone who's earning 20 grand, and buying a gram of Coke at the weekend, the reason, but you've got it under control and you win the lottery. The reason that you're only buying 1 gram of Coke at the weekend and you're under control is because that's all your salary could afford. And suddenly you've got the lottery and you're buying it by the kilo and your life goes out of control and you lose everything, right? That the money is a magnifying glass, and cocaine often is a tool for escaping how much we don't like ourselves. Whereas, if I'm earning the same 20 grand and I'm spending my spare money on, donating shoes to the homeless or whatever, when I come into money, that's going to get magnified and I'm going to start a foundation or, do something good with that money. The money is a magnifying glass.
It's so true.
And the difference between those two people is the belief about who they are.
And they're the quiet reflections that we need to spend our time with and see what reflection do we want to see in the mirror, right? It's what is it that I'm seeing and what do I want to see and where's the gap? And that's the thing I need to work on. That's because only you know, isn't it? It's only you know what you want to see. And then go out and do the work. Go out and do the work. So at this juncture, Tom, I'd just like to thank you. This conversation's just flowed, and that's exactly how I wanted it to be from the start. And you are such a gracious energy creator of words, the way you project what you're thinking and express it. And I'm so mindful of that, and I'm so grateful that we have crossed each other's paths and we seem to be on this path for a while now. So fortunately for me and unfortunately for you, you're going to be putting up with me for a while. So thank you for being part of this journey. Now, just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say or add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the reason that I'm doing this is because I know what it's like to feel empty inside. I know what it's like to feel directionless and meaningless and purposeless and like a loser and all of those feelings. And I know how to walk the path out of that. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I don't want anybody to go through that who doesn't need to. So if anybody is listening who is feeling that and they would like to have a conversation, I am here and I would be happy to have that conversation.
And I will be on the show notes of the podcast. There will be all of Tom's links, social media, email, etc. So if anything has resonated with you, please reach out. I know Tom is really open just to have a conversation, just to shed some light on maybe some things that you may not see. And if then things work out, you can always reach out to Tom, and he's available. Like I said, he is international, so he has seen life in different parts of the world as well. And that's where his real skill and knowledge comes from, being able to adapt to his environment and figure it out, which he's been doing all his life and he continues to do. So at this juncture, Tom, I'd really like to thank you. Thank you for being a guest today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Can I add one more thing?
Of course you can.
Just something that I'm exploring at the minute, and I would love to have conversations with anybody who's been through this, is the boarding school piece.
Okay.
I'm doing some research at the minute around the impact that boarding school has on leadership. So I would love to speak to any people who have achieved success, who have been through boarding school, about their experience.
Okay.
And it's not about coaching or getting clients. It's about me figuring out if there's a course or a program that I can build that would support people who have been through that. So
fine. Perfect.
I'd love to have that conversation as well.
Fine. And I'll send a message out to the people I know as well, because I know a few people that have been in boarding school, and they may reach out to you on that as well. So at this juncture, Tom, I'd like to thank you. Thank you for being a guest today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, and I will be sharing this out far and wide. And I know there's going to be many more conversations that we're going to have in private that will help us both hopefully make our journeys a little bit easier. And when I'm over your side of the woods, which hopefully this COVID situation allows us sometime soon, I would definitely be coming across, because Canada is a country I've never visited and I definitely want to visit one day. So hopefully that can happen as well.
Well, thank you for having me on. This has been a fantastic conversation. And I really acknowledge your wisdom and your passion for this, this subject of helping people become more of what they are.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, sir.
Thank you so much, Tom. Right. So I was Bhavik. I'm the guest of I'm the host, should I say, of Bigger Than the Hustle. And just a few thoughts to leave you before we go. Big energy leads to big thoughts. Big thoughts lead to big ideas. Big ideas lead to big actions. And big actions lead to a big life. So keep thinking big. Until next week. Goodbye.
I want everyone to realize that a goal isn't a place to get to. It's a place to come from. So make your choices and your actions based on if you had already attained your goal. What would the choices that this type of person that you're aiming to be, what would they make now? What choices and actions would they take now to create that future?